Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soulful Hunter podcast. I am your host, Johnny Mack. Through this podcast, I am on a mission to transform lives through primal adventure and to spread my mission of mentorship is conservation. This podcast is powered by Washington Backcountry, a resource for all hunters new and old. To find out more about Washington Backcountry, go to wabackcountry.com or search for Washington Backcountry on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soulful Hunter podcast. I got just a wonderful guest for you. She's been on the podcast multiple times before, and we are continuing on with another edition of the Why series. Today's Why series is specifically focused around why we predator hunt. And we got Jana Waller lined up for us. She's joining us, and we're going to be diving into public perception of why predator hunting is so important, why, how it portrays to the public and to non-hunters, and then the battle that wages between our hunting rights and just people's perception and perspective. A lot of people have opinions, not many people have perspectives. And Jana released in probably last month or so, a wonderful episode where she went out and hunted a cougar. And so that sparked a lot of comments and some controversy. And I wanted to have her on and talk about the predator hunting, because there's so often people are like, why do you kill predators? And so it was like no better time to talk about it than right now. So Jana, thanks for coming on and joining us for another episode.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's always an honor to talk with you. And like I've said on some of the other podcasts, I believe that you are preaching such a good message, that hunters are animal lovers. We're out there enjoying the wild outdoors. I think hunters, as well as outfitters and ranchers, know more about what's going on in our own backyards and in the backcountry more than most. And I'm really excited. In fact, I'm the one who spurred this topic on with you. I was on a drive last week and I said, Johnny, we have got to talk more about predator hunting, because in comparison, in the last 10 years, I've aired a lot of predator hunting shows, bear hunting, even wolf hunting, coyote, mountain lion. And there's always backlash because it is so misunderstood. Even throughout the hunting community, it's very misunderstood. But of course, the non-hunters and, Facebook land, as I like to call it, it's really misunderstood. In comparison to other years, I didn't get as much negative backlash, but there's two reasons why I wanted to talk about predator hunting with you right now, why it's a hot topic. Number one is, I can't even say it without laughing, everyone is talking about the Tiger King documentary that is out on Netflix, and I can't not laugh. I don't even, if the listeners out there have not watched the Tiger King, or they're living under a rock, no, just kidding. But it's about
No, but really.
It's about a guy named Joe Exotic who breeds tigers and mountain lions and jaguars and you name it, big wild cats. I think in his documentary he said at one point, what was it, 257 that he had of them. And he had a zoo in Oklahoma where people could pay to tour the zoo. People could pay to hold or get their photos taken with these tiger cubs. And then as the 5-episode series unfolds, it's just this huge drama of Joe hiring someone to kill Carol Baskin, who is actually, I'd like to talk about her type of person a lot. Carol Baskin runs the Big Cat Rescue in Florida. She has almost just as many caged big cats as Joe Exotic did. Claims to be against captive big wild cats, even though she's got a huge big park herself. It's interesting because Carol, I'm sure, is an anti-hunter and constantly is preaching that, these cats don't deserve cages and all the other things, and comes from a very different perspective and has all these people following her and believing in her that she's doing the right thing. And it just reminds me of how the world in general, speaking in general, does not understand what's going on in their very own backyards, meaning their very own back countries, in the mountains, in the woods, and how wildlife it needs predator hunting. It needs management of their predators. That was one reason, is because of this big boom of Tiger King. And another reason is that I did just air an episode where I took a mature mountain lion and with a handgun, and the handgun was a Desert Eagle 429 made by Carr Firearms Group, and Carr, as well as Magnum Research, shared that picture. And on a social media account that is primarily a handgun account, or guns, primarily guns and shooting, not necessarily a lot of hunting, there was a lot of comments on those two pages on Instagram where people were crude, rude, name calling. And it was, you can just tell they have no idea why we hunt predators. So for those two big reasons, I knew you and I needed to chat and get out another podcast and talk about the topic.
Yeah, totally. You know, what's really interesting is I come from a shooting background before a hunting background, but in my mind, I always wanted to be a hunter, and I knew that, guns were made for killing, and they're tools, but in the end all is what you can use them for. And so being a shooter, I don't understand why more shooters aren't into hunting. There's a lot of pro Second Amendment, but there's not necessarily a definitive handhold between shooters and hunters. And
Right.
it's really interesting to hear that you would get backlash from a lot of shooters that then don't hunt, or say,
Yeah.
Why are you killing that animal with that type of weapon, or,
It always
whatever
really
it is.
surprises me as well. It always surprises me continually when pro shooters, pro gunners, I call them, or hunters themselves jump on social media and start, ridiculing predator hunting. It is so hypocritical. And I know that it mainly comes from just an uneducated perspective of not understanding how many of these big cats are out in the wild, the damage they do to the elk and deer populations. There's just that link is broken. Like, oh, I'm a big deer hunter. One of the comments was, I'm a big deer hunter, but this is disgusting. Well, first off, why is it okay that you put levels of importance on wildlife? Why is it okay for you in your mind to go out and hunt in your backyard and fill your freezer with a deer, but I can't go hunt in my backyard and fill my freezer with a mountain lion? Well, there's a second link that's broken too, is people don't understand mountain lion is delicious eating just as bear is. And so they don't know that, yeah, I am filling my freezer with it. It's not the main reason, because there's a lot of other things to eat, but it's definitely a benefit of mountain lion hunting. That's a link, but
Yep.
people just don't understand, because most predators are so elusive, and a lot of them will only come out and hunt at night. They aren't seen by a lot of people. They don't understand unless they're in the mountains and they can see the tracks in the snow, or they can, see the signs of, deer carcasses or whatever it be. They don't understand how prevalent they are, and what amount of damage they actually do on the elk and deer herds. So
Totally. And
mountain lion,
it's really,
and every state, let me just add real quick too, every state is so different in how they handle their mountain lion problems as well. From Washington, Idaho, Montana, Colorado, Wyoming, we all have mountain lion hunting. Some let dogs, some don't allow dogs. Some have a long season, others are cut pretty short. Like, it's all really different, and you'll get differing opinions of what the hunt should actually entail. But it is of my opinion that it is crucial. It's an absolute crucial part of wildlife management in a lot of the states, and people need to become educated on that.
Yeah, totally. So I fight the battle with the cougar meat in my own house. My wife, knows that I hunt. I've told her I would love to kill a cougar at some point. She's like, well, what are you going to do with the meat? And I'm like, well, we're going to eat it. And I've heard it tastes like pork or blah, blah, blah. And she's like, no way. And so, I struggle. I still want to get one. I think they're one of the most like elusive, mystical animals out in the woods of North America. But at the same time, when I do shoot one, I'm gonna then be able to educate my wife and my family and my neighbors and my community
Right.
along with that. I think there's this fear of you can't eat things, and it was really interesting, Jana, when we were in Salt Lake City at your seminar that you gave at the Hunt Expo.
Mm-hmm.
Someone asked about eating wolf, or you brought up eating wolf, and then there was one guy who raised his hand. He was from Canada that said he ate wolf, and
Right.
he said that was like out of all the animals, the one that he wouldn't really recommend. And then we talked about the Steve Rinella, Remy Warren, um, when they cooked coyote and tried it.
Yeah.
So I think like dog might be the off
Stretching
limit.
it a bit.
Yeah, stretching it, but the cats are good to go, because I know Jeremiah Doty from Field to Plate out of California. He had some bobcat meat that he was talking about and doing some recipes with, and
Yeah.
so I mean I've heard great things about it. I haven't tried it personally, but I'm not against it, and I think
Yeah.
that's where people like to put their foot into places, and where like you have no real perspective. You're
Right.
just voting based off of how you feel. They vote based off of feelings rather
Well,
than like true data.
yeah. Well, first off, when it comes to eating mountain lion, yeah, it does. I've eaten a lot of it in a lot of different ways. It does. It is the consistency of like a pork chop. That's what it looks like. That's what it feels like. But it's the taste of it is much sweeter. So if you're going to do like steaks on the grill, it would be like cooking a pork chop on the grill with cat as well as a lot of other predators. You have to fully cook it. It's not like beef or even other ungulates that you can do like a medium rare to rare. No, you need to fully cook it just like bear. It can carry trichinosis, but it's delicious. One of the best ways I like it, and I've had it, is smoked, where you do a roast and it's smoked and you slice it, and it's like a smoky flavored pork chop. It's delicious. Now I get it, the thought is hard for people to kind of wrap their brain around. Like it's just such an odd thing. And it can be a mental hurdle to get over. One of the things I think is the easiest way is to make mountain lion into like sausages or Theringer. I actually had this last cat I took. I have the main cut, the big, beautiful cuts of steak still in my freezer because my neighbor, who is like a chef extraordinaire, we're going to do something really fun on the grill with it this summer. But I had the rest of it made into Theringer, which is like a big, um, fully cooked already sausage. Like people could relate to it from the Midwest. We always used to make all of our deer into venison sausage. It's a lot like that. It's about 5 inches in diameter, and it's in a casing, and you slice it, and you have it with crackers or cheese or even on bread as a sandwich. That can be a little bit easier to get over the weird hurdle than a steak off the grill. But the point in fact is mountain lion is delicious to eat. But I really stand by that the even more important reason to get out and fully enjoy a mountain lion hunt is the fact that their numbers need to be managed. If any of your listeners are really interested in reading a really interesting research study, there was a 3-year study done in the area that I live in, Montana, and it is posted on the Montana Fish and Game website. It's a predation study where they studied mountain lions. They did a bunch of phases of collaring them. They studied their effects on the elk herds, and I was actually part of that study on different days where we went out with the teams, and the helicopter crew would air gun and net a cow, and then the biologist would get up on the cow. They'd put a collar on her. They would take fat density tests. They do an ultrasound test on her. They would take blood samples and do a lot of scientific research on the cow. And then with that trackable collar, they could tell when that cow, if that cow was pregnant, and when she would, in this calving season, they could follow her along, and then they could get up on that calf, and they would capture the calf, again, take a bunch of scientific data, doing no harm to the calf whatsoever. They would weigh it, take blood samples, and often collar the calves as well. And if those calves didn't survive, the collars would tell them that, and they could get up onto the calves and see what, in fact, was the reason for their death. And in that study, it showed, in short, that in the Bitterroot Valley of Montana, that there's an overabundance of mountain lion, and that they simply need to be managed. Their numbers need to be taken out. And due to that study, they have management areas set in place with quotas. And when those quotas are filled, they're filled. And they almost every year get filled. There's a female quota and a male quota. And so there's a lot of science. Our fish and game departments get a lot of slack, especially when it comes to the deer herds and the elk herds and predator hunting. It's very political, and they get a lot of slack even from the hunter community, because we all want bigger numbers of deer. We all want bigger, better deer. We all want bigger, better elk. And it's of course not an exact science, but the fish and game departments are trying to work really hard with the budgets that they have, which are primarily funded by hunters, by the way. But they have to work within the budgets they've got. They also have to work within the political, ropes that are tied hard around them. But they're doing all they can. There's a lot of science to back behind the importance of predator hunting.
Yeah, so let's dive into some of this stuff. In the state of Washington, where I'm from, in 2008, there was an article released by the Seattle Times that mentioned a Washington State University biologist doing a study that predator hunting for cougars is doing more harm than good. But this was in 2008, and in 1996, in the state of Washington, hound hunting cougars with hounds was outlawed.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, in 2018, 2019, we've already had multiple cougar attacks on people in the state of Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And their children in the northeast corner, one escaped. One guy was killed riding his bike. There's been a lot of stuff going on, and these were not as prevalent as back when you could hunt cougars with hounds. And it's a lot harder to hunt a cougar without hounds,
Oh
without
yeah, it turns
tracking
into
them,
what's
chasing
called a
them.
happen chance animal. It's like it yeah, it's kind of like wolf hunting. It's primarily, again, I'm generalizing, it's primarily a happen chance animal. There are rare individuals who have had a lot of luck calling them in and having success using calls, but it is definitely a happen chance animal. And the same as with mountain lion hunting. You can go out. I know guys that do and actually have success just simply targeting mountain lion. But when you're not allowed to hunt them with the hounds, it's much, much, much harder. And it turns out to be sort of a happen chance animal that you come upon when you're already hunting elk or deer or something else.
Right. And so since, like, nowadays, in present time, cougar populations in the state of Washington are exploding.
Right.
We can't hunt them with hounds. In 2008, so a little over 10 years ago, some study was put out through Seattle Times saying that when hunters target big male cats and kill them, they're actually doing more harm than good, because a bunch of younger cats will come into the area to the funeral, blah blah blah, and is actually bringing more cats in by killing and taking out a big male cat. But that person didn't really show any of the evidence or tracking, like where are these other cats coming from and if that was really true. And so it was definitely like a one-sided piece, and you could tell it
Yeah.
was written by a woman who doesn't hunt, and is really interesting. So take us through your perspective of that, and how your experience of what you've seen.
I think it's really important that we all remember that whenever we're reading an article, we've got to remember the source, especially when it has an ulterior motive, if you ask me. Um, First off, like I said earlier, all of these research studies, can come up with conclusions. And I'm always fascinated to hear about the science of it all, about what biologists who, have, if what biologists have to say, who have spent a lot of time on the ground with research projects. I read the article that you're talking about, and it's interesting to me. I always look at the source. I think was it Washington Times or the Seattle Post or
Seattle Times. Yep.
Seattle Times.
Yep.
Yeah. Look at the source, look if there's any political agenda behind the source of the article. I read it and it sounds like hunters are the problems, which
Yeah,
I
totally.
think there's a lot of articles out there like it, just like, they're just, they're propaganda, and they're often spun towards a certain objective. I would want to know, if, in fact, what they're stating is true, that you kill a big mature tom cat, a male cat, hundreds show up to the funeral, you're right, is how the article stated it. Well, I want to know how they know hundreds of juvenile cats showed up. What proof or what scientific data do they have to show that younger cats showed up to the game? It's interesting to me. There is a lot of intricacies when it comes to cat hunting. They have big territories, but it seems interesting to me, like as far as the biologists I've talked to in Montana where I live, and the houndsman. I want to talk further. If I forget to go back to this, I want to talk about two different types of houndsmen and perspectives of those houndsmen, which is important to always remember as well when you're reading social media posts. But when you do take out a mature cat, this other article was stating hundreds always come in. What's interesting to me is, there's got to be data behind that if you're going to state such a claim. But if the bottom line is that we have too many mountain lion and that they're creating problems, then what is the solution? The solution, in my opinion, certainly isn't hiring a government trapper or aerial gunner, which is what a lot of states do with their predator issues, not cats, but other predator problems. Why not generate hunters' dollars for the hunters out there who are interested in a mountain lion hunt and who really
Totally.
enjoy the chase, or they want to, I've taken friends on mountain lion hunts just to stand in the tree with me below me so they can look into the eyes of a wild big cat, and it's mystical. Like there's no
Yeah, so
arguing.
let
Yeah.
me jump in right here.
Yeah.
It's mystical. You just said it. You take people
Yes.
with you just to look into the eyes of the cats. So this is why like the series Tiger King, like it's so captivating by people. There's the
Right.
power that these animals hold, so that when you get within their presence,
Yep.
it changes you
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah.
And
I
and
agree.
so
And just
yeah,
because I'm out hunting them doesn't mean I don't love them. This is another link that's broken. And mainstream media, certain social media, certainly doesn't do us any of hunters any favors. It's another link that's broken. Cats are amazing. I love cats. I love mountain lions, and I even love going to the zoos. And trust me, I don't need any emails, people telling me how bad zoos are. I get it. But like, who doesn't love to look at the big male lions strut around, and like, just their
right.
presence is magical and mystical, and they're just amazing animals. You want to watch the amazing, raw, sheer power of big cats in the wild? Go follow Nature is Metal on Instagram. Have you ever followed that page?
I have not, but
It's
I think someone
brutal.
shared something with me. Yeah, it shows like just the kills and like
Oh
just how
yeah, it's
nature is.
brutal. And let me
Yeah.
say this little, like, don't let your little kids watch it. They'll never turn on a cartoon ever again. But it's a fascinating Instagram page that shows what nature is really like. And these big cats are insane. They're insane athletes. They're insane killers. They're insane family members. They've got tribes that they belong to and packs that they will kill for. They just posted a video 2 nights ago of this pack of hyenas going after a pack of lions. It's insane. But the point in fact is, people don't understand what they're like in the wild. And you can take that whether you're talking tigers, whether you're talking African lions, or whether you're talking mountain lions or cougars, which for people who might not know is the same thing. Like there's puma, whatever. There's a lot of different verbiage we use for mountain lion. Um, they're amazing. They're amazing to see and witness, but I still believe wholeheartedly from my decade of living in the mountains and the experiences that I've had and the biologist friends that I've had and the outfitters and houndsman friends I've got that they need to be managed like wolves and coyotes and bobcats and everything else. They just do too much damage. They on average, this is average, they kill a deer a week. And that's a lot of deer. That's one big mature cat killing a lot of deer. One thing about the article, though, that I do agree with is that often the problem cats are juveniles or teenagers, if you will, but they're often mistaken. Teenage cats, meaning a mountain lion that's 3 or 4 years old, they're big. I have seen in the wild a female mountain lion with two kits, and the two kits were almost as big as she was. The juveniles before they're kicked off and on their own, these are big cats, and they're often young, and they're often hungry, and they often haven't learned to hunt as other big mature cats have, and they're the ones who often are wandering into town and getting into trouble. I do agree that juvenile cats are often the ones who are getting into trouble. I also disagree that the article likes to insinuate that all hunters are out for the big, mature, big cat, big tom cat. Well,
I know. When I read that, I was like, dude, if I see a cougar, I'm going to shoot it,
yeah,
regardless of like if it's really old or not,
yeah, exactly. I mean, whether it's female or male. And so let me go back to the real topic real quick of houndsmen. I have a lot of friends are houndsmen. Let me just say that first off. I do. And being a houndsman is a lot of work. You are taking care of your dogs, you know, 365 days of the year. It's not just for a hunt here and there in the wintertime. Houndsmen are passionate people who love their dogs and who love the chase and love the hunt. I've always kind of joked that there's two different kinds of houndsmen, even though they do kind of blur lines a bit. There's those that love and live for just the chase. And then there's outfitters or houndsmen who are hunters who, yeah, they love the chase, but they love the hunt as well. And they love, hunting and actually taking mountain lions, with hunters. Now, in the state of Utah, for example, houndsmen are often they often fight within amongst the division, the Utah Wildlife Division, and amongst hunters because they don't want as many tags issued as, let's say, the department wants because of predation studies that they're doing on deer, currently doing right now. One of the studies this year showed of the fawn mortality rates that not one of the fawns survived, and the main cause was mountain lion. So they then issued more mountain lion tags. Well, a lot of the houndsmen who love just the chase don't want more mountain lions killed because there's less to chase and tree and have fun under and film and photograph and do all that stuff. So that's just another important key to remember when you're looking at social media posts and who is posting what is their perspective? Where are they coming from? Do they honor the hunt? Do they, allow the hunt? Are they, pro hunt, or do they just want the chase? Because you'll definitely get differing opinions on that.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah, well, just like the differing opinions on you shooting your cougar with a handgun versus a rifle or
Yeah.
something like that. Isn't
Yeah.
that part of the
Yeah.
drama that
I not with mountain lion as much. It's really funny though. I took a cat with a bow a few years back, and you can just tell the people who are not hunters at all. This is a really important key to remember. If you go on social media and you're a hunter, which most of your listeners are, I'm assuming, and you go and you watch people's posts, and you may see comments like, you're so disgusting for killing that, or, which seem to be, I'm a hunter and I would never do that. A lot of posts where people claim to be hunters, they're not hunters at all. In fact, they're actually anti-hunters who've opened up hunting related pages so they can sort of infiltrate and target and tag and harass and, I've had posts as much as people, emailing or messaging sponsors. There were a bunch of the comments on the car firearms post where it's like, I'm a gun lover and I love my car firearm, but I'm unfollowing this page because this is sick, like on my
Yeah.
mountain lion picture, where those aren't they're not even gun owners. They're not even they're they're portraying to be gun owners or hunters and trying to stir emotion in people and trying to further their cause of not having mountain lion hunting or any other kind of hunting for that matter.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Well, it's really interesting also, like, people are afraid of what they don't know.
For sure.
You know, going back to slavery, that someone with a different skin color shows up and people become afraid and then do weird things and not right things and just act cuckoo, take it all the way to, what you're doing and predator hunting, and people take it, and what they don't know, they instantly make a judgment call on without having any true firsthand experience or
Right.
perspective, and then they're set in their ways and be like, well, it's just bad, it's just
Well,
bad.
and social
And
media gives that platform for people to all of a sudden rise and be keyboard warriors, and they love to bash and ridicule and name call and bully, through these fake accounts. And even whether they're fake or not, but a lot of them are not even real accounts or real people. And you're right, they're filled with emotion. And the ones that are really commenting and are themselves and are saying, this is disgusting, blah, blah. They're speaking from emotion, but they're also speaking from a place where they've never had anyone teach them about how the natural world works and how what
totally.
is going on in our what would they want if they were, let's say that they were driving through the mountains in their minivan and they're all of a sudden they come across a mountain lion and she's stalking a herd of deer, and that or he that whatever he or she that mountain lion is stalking a herd of deer, and in the course of the next 6 hours the family stays in their minivan and they watch this mountain lion kill fawn after fawn after fawn. What would they what would be their solution to that? What I always ask people who will have an open, honest dialogue with me is, what do you? Okay, I'll let them know, like, this is what the study shows. Like, this, we have way too many mountain lion. What do you propose we do? Because sitting back and doing nothing is going to worsen the problem. Is going
Right.
to create our elk herds that already need our help, that whose numbers went. Let's take Yellowstone, for example, because people can relate to Yellowstone because they drive through Yellowstone, right? It's one of the greatest parks in our country and it's gorgeous. And Yellowstone is an amazing, magical place. But they drive through, and that is oftentimes their only exposure to wildlife. Yellowstone is not exactly the backcountry, but it's oftentimes their only exposure. What do people propose we do when in Yellowstone, for example, the elk herd has gone from estimates of 19 to 20,000 down to less than 4,000 because of the wolves. The moose population has plummeted in Yellowstone.
Right.
What's the answer? Because don't tell me nature balances itself out, because everybody knows who has any kind of brain that that is simply not the case. The nature does not balance itself out. So other than that argument, which is the first one they always like to throw out there, what do they propose we do? Because a lot of states, for example, let's take the wolf for example, a lot of states actually pay people to not people government trappers to go up in helicopters to aerial gun them. That's they're paying someone to do that. That's not generating dollars for wildlife management. And the dollars that are generated by hunters purchasing licenses and through the Pittman Robertson Act of the excise tax that's taxed on all hunting related products, those billions of dollars are what goes towards wildlife management. But that also goes towards keeping public lands public, management of trailheads, management of um, fisheries. So all these things that the public gets to use too. Our public land is used by hikers, bird watchers, mountain bikers, mountain climbers. Those are public lands that everybody gets to use. And there's a lot of people that don't understand that a lot of those dollars are generated from hunters. So, and if they love to watch elk and deer and they love a balanced nature, what do they propose we do if all of a sudden we didn't have hunting and trapping and management of our predators? And I have not yet talked to one person besides the nature balances itself out. I've not talked to one person who has any good sound answer to that.
Right. Yeah, that's because people don't want to go that far. They don't really
Right.
want to put themselves in that position. And I just want to back up real quick. The point of what I tried to make in slavery is that people devalued certain skin colors because they were unfamiliar with it,
Yes.
And so
Yes.
so my listeners don't confuse what I was saying with that.
You're
Yeah,
talking
it's really,
about judgment, and that's really what we're talking about here today with people not understanding predator hunting. You're just talking about the judgment of predator hunting without knowing anything about it. And that's what you're saying about slavery, is that
yeah,
there was judgment on human beings without without having any experience themselves,
yeah,
So in the judgment, the reason it's so important is because it's the same reason why we need people to understand hunting. I would love them to all partake in it personally, boots on the ground, get
yes,
out there and see what a hunt really
yeah,
is. But even if the 85 to 90% of the United States population that doesn't hunt, even if they don't hunt, they need to understand why it's critical that we do hunt, because those are the ones who are actually going to be impacting the decisions made on hunting, just like
yeah,
on gun rights, on hunting, on predator management, on,
totally,
yeah. So
totally,
we need those nons, not the antis. They'll probably never come over. The nons, we need them to understand the importance of hunting, the importance of wildlife management, the importance of taking out certain numbers of deer and elk and antelope out of the ungulate populations every year. What would happen if we didn't hunt deer and elk? My gosh, like there's millions and millions of dollars spent annually on car insurances and medical bills and agriculture reimbursement. Like, what would happen if we didn't hunt deer, the number one hunted big game species? It would be mass hysteria after years on end of not being able to manage our deer herds in this country. People don't
oh,
understand how it's
absolutely,
also related. And back to the point of saying how it shocks me all the time of hunters bashing mountain lion hunting, for example. I ask people to please educate themselves a little bit deeper on the effects big cats and wolves, even coyotes, have on deer populations. It's if you I had one guy on the Car Firearms page say, I'm a deer hunter and I just think this is disgusting. I don't support or understand such a thing. Well, it's amazing to me that he's willing to type that, because in my perspective it's just so hypocritical. If you love to hunt deer hunting, how can you not at least understand other forms of hunting? But it is
yeah.
so misunderstood.
The
And
fact that he put I don't understand, it's like, well, here's your chance to actually start
do
understanding.
yeah, exactly. Like, do a little bit of research, ask around, talk to hunters, talk to houndsmen, talk go Google. Like, that's actually one of the comments, I believe it was his, that underneath I said, you need to Google it. Here's a good link to start with. And that's the going to the Montana, the link didn't show up, but going to Montana Fish and Game Mountain Lion Study, and that'll show you exactly what science is behind the fact that we have to predator hunt.
Yeah. Well, so going back to like the state of Washington's research or data, um, and this was just a quick Google search that I did, so all you listeners out there could do the same thing. In 1996, hounds hunting for cougars was banned. In the last century, so 100 years, there have been in the state of Washington 16 recorded cougar attacks on humans within the last 100 years. Well, since 96, and just within the last 3 or 4 years, multiple people have been killed by cougars in the state of Washington. And so, like, out of those 16 attacks, a lot of them have happened uh, since banning hound hunting for cougars. And it's just really interesting. It's like, it just goes to show, like, just because you don't hunt cougar doesn't mean that you should strip that right or strip that ability from anyone else, because the decision that you make and any decision that any of us makes impacts this world. It impacts multiple people and generations to come.
Well, this is a really good point that I'd like to make, that coincides with what we're talking about today. Somewhere back in the legislative 1996, some anti-hunter group band together, probably PETA based, band together to get the hound hunting component stopped in the state of Washington, right? Anyone who has been around hounds knows that it's exactly what they live for. Those dogs live to hunt, love to
Yep.
hunt. It's what they're bred for. And yet it's funny. Just last year or the year before, it might have been 2018, there was a bill instated that never got very far, but to stop all kind of dog hunting because it's cruel to the dog. It was
Right.
it was put out there by a PETA type
No,
organization. It might
we're
have been
actually
them.
in the state of Washington. We're fighting this right now.
Oh, are
This
you really?
is
Yeah.
this is actually, and even though hound hunting is outlawed, they're saying even people who waterfowl
Right.
with dogs or
Right.
upland bird hunt with dogs, it is inhumane to the dog to have them do that.
Right. Which is it's ridiculous. I mean, it's about as ridiculous as it comes. But all of us hunters need to be aware of these things that are going on. And you may ask yourself, well, who's going to fight? Who's going to fight for the hunters? Who is fighting inside the courtroom for the hunters and the houndsmen? Well, it's groups like the Sportsmen's Alliance and NSSF and these other organizations that we all need to get behind. We hunters need to support the organizations and even our conservation groups like, the Mule Deer Foundation, the National Wild Turkey Federation, Sportsmen for Fish and Wildlife, because those groups are often funding the other groups that are putting the attorneys in place to fight for our rights. These are
Yep.
the kind of things that are going on behind the scenes. And when I see hunters bashing one another and wasting their energy or their dollars on ripping on one another, I think, whoa, whoa, whoa. You have no idea what's going on behind the scenes to take away all of our rights, all of our hunting rights. And when one right gets taken away, it just makes it easier for these anti-hunting groups to instate other bills to try to get the other ones taken away. And
Yep.
it's ridiculous. Like, people, it's much easier to say for people to understand that their labs or their whatever breeds love to bird hunt, but those walkers or tick hounds or any other kind of cat or bear dogs, they love it just as much, and they should be able to hunt just as much as waterfowl dogs do. But look what
Totally.
happened. They got that right stripped away, and it's not impossible that down the road waterfowl hunters might get that we need to band together stronger and be aware of what's going on in the courtrooms. We need to follow pages like the
Absolutely.
Sportsmen's Alliance that are going to keep us regularly posted. It's hard to keep up with it all, especially in other states that you don't live. But social media, start following those pages that are going to give you good information on
Totally.
what's going on in your state.
Oh, I totally agree. And it's so important because if you don't think it affects you now, it will at some point. Just like the Second Amendment,
Yep.
they can try to take guns away, and that might not be very successful right away, but they can attack your ammunition and how
Yep.
you go about these different processes. And now all of a sudden it becomes way more difficult. So hunting, we gotta fight for, and that's why we do this Y series. I think it's
Right.
really interesting. My brother and I, we always joked when as soon as we became parents, we were talking. This is horribly mean, and we did not do this, everyone who's listening, but to teach our kids that, like, the sky's not blue and that the sky is actually like a different color. And if we were to, like, consistently teach our children that what we know as mankind, certain aspects about the world was incorrect, but we taught them differently. Like, how much of that child truly believes what their parents telling them, but then never finds it out for themselves, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
And so how this relates to hunting and how it relates to predator hunting and all this is like, just because your parents taught you something or told you something doesn't mean it is the absolute truth. And for everyone to become a better human, they need to study and dig deep on what it is they truly believe in. And every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And
Well,
so
I
don't just jump to conclusions
right.
and vote a certain way or say, I can't believe that, that's disgusting, how dare you,
Right.
and quickly throw the judgment out.
In amidst this chaotic time that we're in, this unprecedented chaos of the coronavirus and quarantine, and I mean, never before in our country has this happened. But all I can do is try to remain positive and what good could come of all this. And while I already know the bad that could come of it, the economic fallout and people losing their jobs and stuff, I understand all that. So, I mean, don't think that I'm diminishing that in any way, shape, or form. But what I'm really hoping the good can come of all that is that families are going to right now they're being forced to spend more time together to really get better
Yeah,
acquainted with one another, to maybe spend time out if you can. Every state's different right now of what they're allowing and what they're not, but if you can get into the woods or into the mountains or on the water together and get outside. And I've been encouraging people to do sort of nature scavenger hunts and look for a feather and an acorn and a shed and all these other things. But I really hope families are going to really realize what is important, and that is quality time together. But
right.
also, I do really feel that through this chaos, people are going to be forced to have a greater awareness of where their food comes from. You know, there's
Yep.
been clearly a run on toilet paper that we all are well aware of, but there's also been a run on a lot of meat departments, vegetable aisles, you know, hand sanitize, hand size, hand sanitizers. Certain things have gone off the shelves, but in general, people have had to become aware of where their food comes from more and more and more.
And
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 I, and I think it can be a beautiful thing for people to understand our lifestyle a little bit better.
absolutely, I've never been more thankful that I'm a hunter than during this pandemic going on, to know that I have meat in my freezer. And I'll
Right?
tell you this, all you listeners out there, I am not going to be judgy or choosy of what meat it is that comes out of my freezer, rather
Right.
than I have meat in my freezer. And if it's cougar meat or bear meat or whatever other type of predator you want to hunt and keep the meat, and whatever it is, I have food for myself and for my family,
Yep.
and that's it. And
Yep.
so managing predators is a big part of that, and it goes hand in hand, and we all need to be on the forefront of fighting for what we love.
Yes, I agree. And even to add to that is, you and I have talked about it, and you know, I hate the word trophy hunting. Just but people understand what I'm talking. I'm talking about, you know, going after the big trophy. And while I of course, everybody loves big animals. I mean, big bucks, big mule deer get my heart racing, big bulls. But if that is your only purpose of being out there, to me, it's just wonky. It's backwards. Like, I think this whole crisis that we're in might have people having a bit more gratitude for the meat. I've never been a trophy hunter per se. I've been blessed with some nice big game animals, but that's never been my sole intent and purpose. And I think this whole thing might do a bit of all of us a little good to have just a greater appreciation for that animal and not just for the rack or the horns, or I
Yeah,
think
totally.
not I'm not I'm not trying to fool anybody. Everybody loves a big animal, and the bigger the better. And, obviously a bigger,
Yep.
mature animal can be smarter and tougher to get. And that thrill of the chase is always fun. But let's all just take a moment and have a little bit more gratitude in our hearts for that meat that is feeding our families and our neighbors and our friends. And I know that I don't think I've ever been more grateful, as you just mentioned, to not even have to worry about it. I don't actually, I mean, would it be a bummer if I didn't have all the amazing fresh vegetables that I get from the grocery store? Yeah, it would be a bummer if I wasn't able to get all that, but I could survive a long time with what's in my freezer. And that
Right.
includes everything from deer, elk, antelope, bear, mountain lion, ducks, trout, pheasant, you name it,
You
it's
name it, it's in
probably in
there.
there.
Yeah. Oh man, this has been such an amazing episode. And Jana, thank you so much for joining us once again. Is there any final things that you really want to like hammer home and let the listeners chew on?
I think we covered it all. I really do. I'm never been, obviously none of us have ever been in this kind of chaotic crisis. I really think it's important to all just stay happy and grateful that we've got, roofs over our heads and family and friends to count on. If you are in need of some food, or maybe your grocery stores are running some low, reach out to other hunters that because hunters are very often more than willing to share. I know I am. I've
Yep.
spread the elk, antelope, and deer meat around quite a bit this year, and especially in the last few weeks. And no, I just hope everybody stays healthy, happy. I'm really hoping that this can cause sort of a paradigm shift in the world of more appreciation of our beautiful backcountries, of nature, and of the wildlife that we're so blessed to hunt.
I love it. Never put so eloquently as from the wonderful Jana Waller. Jana, you're amazing. Everyone, make sure to go check out this episode that Jana did, along with all the rest of her season of Skullbound TV. That's found on what, Sportsman's Channel?
Yep, it's on Sportsman's Channel. And right now, depending on your listeners and when they will listen to this, but April of 2020, if you happen to be listening to this right in April of 2020, it is free preview month. So depending on your TV provider, if you've got direct or dish or cable, you should get, almost all of them I think are on board with the free preview. You should get Sportsman's Channel in the month of April 2020 for free. So if it's not part of your package, you should still get it. I'm on right now until the end of June on the Sportsman Channel. But if you are looking for some fun stuff to watch that's free online anytime, I've got Skullbound Chronicles on carbontv.com. And that is, like I said, free online anytime. It's an app for your phone. Or if you're like me and you're old school and you still like to watch TV on your TV, if you've got a Roku or Fire Stick, you can just go into the search on your Roku menu, type in Carbon TV, should pop up. It'll say add channel, and whoop, it'll add the channel right next to your Netflix and Amazon and anything else you got up there. So that is Skullbound Chronicles. I've got some highlights up there. I'm launching a brand new season of Chronicles starting at the end of June, season 2. Brand new episodes coming at you on Carbon, but otherwise, stay safe and happy, people.
All right. You hear it from Jana herself. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. As always, stay soulful.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, I'd love it if you could go ahead and give this a rating as well as subscribe. Also, you can check us out on Instagram under the Soulful Hunter Podcast. Make sure to tag us in pictures and posts and use the hashtag Soulful Hunter. To find out more about the Soulful Hunter Podcast, go to soulfulhunter.com and be sure to follow the podcast, as we are going to be bringing you a lot of great information, insight, and changing lives through primal adventure. I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Stay tuned and stay soulful.